Hey, what's going on, everybody? Chris Meaney here of FTN, and here are a few of my top DFS plays for Week 3 of the NFL season. Up at the top, again, Kyler Murray for the third straight week. I just wanted to bring attention to Murray here. I'm seeing him sub 6% owned over at FTNDaily.com. I think people are just saying, you know what? Kyler Murray's up at the top here in pricing. This game's not going to be a back-and-forth game. Jacksonville's not going to be able to keep it competitive, and I'm going to spend down on Patrick Mahomes. I have no problem with Patrick Mahomes. I just feel like people may be getting too cute here with Kyler Murray. He was 8-2 last week, and now he's 8-3 on DraftKings. He's gone up $100 more. That's it. 34 points in week 1, 38 points in week 2. He's got 9 total scores. He's got a rushing touchdown in each game. Jacksonville's given up 3 plays of at least 40-plus yards through the air. If Arizona runs away with this game, it most likely means that Kyler Murray had his way. They're getting really nothing on the ground from James Conner. I like Kyler Murray here. I have nothing against Patrick Mahomes, but I like Murray a little bit more than Mahomes in this spot. And as I said last week, I'm not always going to talk about just studs, but I wanted to bring him up because I feel like the contrarian way in DFS lately has been to spend up at the quarterback position where everybody's trying to find value. So I'm into Kyler Murray here. Again, I have nothing against Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is in a pretty good spot as well in a high total game against the Chargers, but I prefer Kyler. And I think if you're playing cash, which most of these plays can be considered strong cash plays, just double ups, 50-50, smaller contests, when you double up with 40 people where you just need to come inside the top 20 to, return value and double up your cash. Kyler is just coming with a safe floor. It is really MVP season here for Kyler Murray, who, by the way, we gave 23-1 on Mean Streets last week, and now he's 7-1 to win the MVP. Get in now before it really does get out of hand, and he is favored to win the award. Russell Wilson is somebody that I like as well against the Vikings here on the road, but in a dome. He's 7-6 on DraftKings. He has 6 touchdowns in 2 games, 26 and 27 fantasy points in his 2 games. Minnesota has allowed the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, the 4th most passing touchdowns at 5, and a 77.8% completion rate. That's what the Vikings defense is allowing to quarterbacks. The number 1 mark in the NFL. What do we know about Russell Wilson? The dude is accurate. He's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. So he's going to be able to pick apart this Vikings secondary. 10.5 yards per attempt, also what the Vikings are allowing for quarterbacks, the second highest mark in the league. Daniel Jones is in here next at 5'8". I'm a little hesitant to roll him out in tournaments because I do feel like his ownership will be pretty high. He was the most picked up quarterback in fantasy over the past couple of days. People are talking about him as the number 1 streaming option, and he's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy right now. He's not a bad play in tournaments. I'm fine with him, but I would like somebody else that we'll get to on the Giants in tournaments a little bit more. But Daniel Jones, if you're playing cash and you want to save some money at the quarterback position, this is a really good spot for DJ. Atlanta has allowed the most fantasy points to quarterbacks, 8 touchdowns, and 9 plays of at least 20-plus yards through the air. It's the 5th most in the NFL. Hurts ran all over them in week 1. Jones had 95 yards on the ground, so he comes with a decent floor. He had 27 yards in week 1, and he is quarterback 5, as I mentioned, in fantasy football. You compare him up maybe with Sterling Shepard, who has been really great. Kenny Golladay, who I think a lot of people are sour on, is a sneaky little play to get a bit contrarian and maybe just take the ownership off at the wide receiver position. But for Jones, I think you could play him just by himself as well. We'll get to Saquon in a little bit, but Austin Eckler is somebody that I like at the running back position. KC has been run all over. Now, I know they just played the Ravens, and Baltimore does a great job at running the football, but through 2 games, they have allowed a league-high 404 rushing yards, 6 yards per carry, 7 total touchdowns on the ground, 4 to running backs, also a league high, and 4 runs of at least 20 yards on the ground. That's also a league high. The 4th most fantasy points given up to running backs. Austin Eckler had 0 targets in week 1. I think that's the outlier game because he reeled in all 9 of his targets in week 2 for 61 yards. And one thing I've noticed this year is the Chargers are using him a little bit different. Last year, he had 17 red zone rushing attempts. He was 4th on his team in red zone rushing attempts. Justin Herbert had more red zone rushing attempts. Joshua Kelly, Justin Jackson, these guys had more red zone rushing attempts than Austin Eckler last season. He already has 17 last season. Also, 2 inside the 5-yard line. He had 2 inside the 5-yard line all of last season. So if he's getting that goal line work, more touches inside the red zone, it's only given him a higher ceiling. I like him at 7-2 against the Chiefs in a high total game where we could see a lot of points here. Saquon Barkley is in here next. I wouldn't play him in cash. I'm a little hesitant to play him in cash, but in tournaments, I think he makes for a great play. He's 6'5" on DK. He's 6'9" on FanDuel. This is the time to get it in now. It's not next week. It's not, okay, no, next week. One more dud game, and then next week, if he balls out this week, everybody's going to be on him in week 4. His price is never going to be this low. He played 84% of the snaps in week 2. He's coming off 10 days rest here. He played on Thursday Night Football, so extra rest against the Falcons, who, again, 4.9 yards per attempt, 6th most in the NFL. The rushing yards, top 10 allowed. They're brutal through the air. They're brutal on the ground. They're just an awful team that I think we can attack week in and week out. And for Saquon last week, 13 for 57, so he had more carries in week 2. He had a 41-yard run. He looked explosive on that run, and he had 3 targets and 2 catches. You could actually do Jones and Saquon in a tournament to get a little bit unique that way, because we have seen in week 1 and week 2, the millionaire makers, their running backs have been linked to the quarterback. So if a quarterback has a passing touchdown to a running back, then boom, you double up your points. And it's a unique way because not a lot of people like to stack their running back with their quarterback. It's like, it's a play maybe if you're rolling out 5 different lineups in one contest. If you're rolling out one, it's probably not the way to go. But Saquon is interesting to me in tournaments, and then Daniel Jones more so in cash. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I have 2 backs in this Chargers and Chiefs game. Everybody's sour on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's all anybody's talking about in fantasy. What do I do with this guy? He fumbled the ball. He can't get in the end zone. He's not getting the goal line carries. He's not really catching any balls out of the backfield. He's 4.8 on DK. 4.8. Are you kidding me? Jeremy Nichols, the Tennessee Titans backup running back, is 4.8. This is straight disrespect. I'm taking this price discount and I'm rolling him out there. I'm even thinking about rolling him in cash, but certainly a tournament play here. At least he's getting a bulk of the carries on the ground. He had 27 of Kansas City's 31 rushing attempts in week 2. That's 87% of his team's rushing attempts. That's solid, right? There's frustrations with his usage in the red zone and not catching those balls. This is a high total game, and I like both backs here. And again, a way to get unique, as everybody's going to go to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and both quarterbacks. I like those guys too, but the ownership's going to be low on the running backs. So the 6th most fantasy points allowed to backs, the Chargers, 3 runs of at least 20 plus yards. The 2nd most, Gibson totaled 108 yards in week 1 against LA, and Zeke and Pollard combined for 237 yards. They combined for 5 catches, and they each found the end zone. We got a total here of 54.5. Play Clyde Edwards-Helaire at this price. You can get him at low ownership, even though his price is 4.8. And it's not all about the low ownership. It's about returning value for what you're going to get. If he gets 15 fantasy points, he's returning value. And that's just a floor, I believe, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Even though we've seen some dud games from him, he does have a ceiling that's pretty high in this offense. Over to wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, and Marvin Jones. Let's start with Jefferson here, 7.2 on DK and 7.4 against Seattle. I think this is going to be a high-powered offense game. I think we're going to see this game creep into maybe the mid to late 50s. We could even see 30 points each from these two squads. Jefferson has 49% of his team's air yards, the 6th highest mark in the NFL, and a 25% target share. Check out our free air yards tool over at ftndaily.com. 19 targets, 11 grabs, 136 yards, and a touchdown. He is that deep threat guy. I like him quite a bit. And then DK Metcalf is 7.3, basically the same price as Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett has the same amount of targets as DK Metcalf, both a 29.5% target share. It runs through both of those guys, but Lockett has had the big games, the big receiving yard games. He's found the end zone 3 times. DK only has 1 touchdown, but Minnesota has allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to wide receivers, 5 touchdowns, 1 behind the league high. Chase and Higgins had touchdowns in week 1. Moore, Hopkins, and AJ had touchdowns against them in week 2. They've already had 2 wide receivers eclipse the century mark through the air against them. 13.5 yards per reception, the 5th highest mark. 8 plays of at least 20 yards through the air, top 6, and 2 plays of at least 40 yards through the air, 2 behind the league high. I think this could be a DK game. Both guys, Lockett and DK with Wilson. I have no problem with that stack. You bring it back with Justin Jefferson. It's a game stack that I think will pay dividends, I do believe. And then Marvin Jones, he's so cheap. He's 6.3 on FanDuel, which is respectable, but he's 4.9 on DK. 4.9 is a 25.5% target share, is inside the top 20 among wide receivers. 279 air yards is the 2nd most in the NFL. He has a touchdown in back-to-back games. Trevor Lawrence is 2nd in the NFL in air yards with 817. They have 0 red zone rushing attempts so far this season. The offensive line is not great. They're going to give up points. Trevor Lawrence is going to throw the football. 84 passing attempts, tied for the 6th most. Marvin Jones is going to be a guy that finishes inside the top 10, 15 every week in terms of targets and volume. So there's an opportunity here here for him to rack up 6 or 7 grabs, maybe find the end zone again as his team plays catch up. At 4.9, he is criminally underpriced. He's been underpriced in each of the first 2 weeks. I've been playing him, and I've been happy with the results. At the tight end position, Kelsey and Waller, I get it. I just didn't want to come in here with just complete studs. I want to try to find some value in other plays that I think could be unique. Kyle Pitts here at 4.9 on DK, 6.2 on FanDuel. A really good week 2. Week 1, he had the 8 targets. He just didn't really do a whole lot with those targets, but it was inside the top 5 at the position. In week 2 against Tampa, a tougher matchup, he reeled in 5 passes, 5 catches for 73 yards. And what I've noticed about the Giants so far this week is they're struggling to stop the tight end position. In week 1, Noah Fant, 8 targets, 6 grabs, 62 yards, and the backup tight end in Denver, Big A, I will not try to pronounce his name, 3 catches, 16 receiving yards, and he found the end zone, had a touchdown. In week 2, Logan Thomas, 8 targets, 5 grabs, 45 yards, just missed a touchdown pass in the end zone. But the backup tight end in Washington, Ricky Seals-Jones, he has a touchdown. So far in 2 weeks, we've seen backup tight ends score touchdowns, and their starting tight ends have decent days here. So at 4.9, I think Kyle Pitts will probably rack up another 8 or 9 targets in this spot. There's a lot more over at ftndaily.com. Check out our rankings, our projections, our NFL optimizer, all kinds of content. If you're looking to be part of the FTN Daily fam, you got the Discord channel there. We have Two Gun, who is not one, not two, but 3 millionaire makers. We have a lot of successful players over at ftndaily.com. And if you are part of the package, you have an opportunity to chat to any of them at any moment for free in our Discord channel. So check out ftndaily.com/pricing. Use the promo code Meaney. Save yourself a little bit of cash. If you have any questions at all, hit me up here in the YouTube section, and I'll circle back before kickoff on Sunday. Good luck. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.